Hi everyone, this is Dreas, and I'd like to welcome you back to another EcoShare. In today's episode, we are going to be discussing caves. Specifically, we are going to talk about how caves form and give names to some of the major structural features that we see in caves. As a note, we are only going to be discussing limestone caves today. However, this will give us a good baseline not only for understanding other types of cave systems, but also for understanding other geological processes in general. Today's adventure brings us to the Walsingham Formation in Bermuda. The Walsingham Formation is Bermuda's oldest limestone deposit. As I mentioned in a previous video, the limestone in Bermuda is the fossilized remnants of an ancient dune ecosystem, and being the oldest, the Walsingham Formation has had the greatest amount of time for the formation of caves. Approaching a cave is a magical experience in and of itself. You'll feel the air rapidly cool by several degrees, and you'll have the opportunity to interact with many native and endemic plants. Specifically, there are species of fern that are found at the entrance to Bermuda caves and nowhere else in the entire world. You'll also see the roots of plants digging down, searching vigorously for water. But how exactly do these caves form? Understanding limestone cave formation requires us to review some basic chemistry. Let's start with water. It's no secret that when it rains in Bermuda, it pours, and all that water has to go somewhere. This water reacts with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to produce carbonic acid. This is the same process that goes into making soda. So when you see all those little bubbles in a soda bottle, that's carbon dioxide that is dissolved in the liquid, and a product of that dissolution is carbonic acid. We have to point out that this is a reversible reaction. So when you see the double arrows, that just means that water and carbon dioxide can come together to create carbonic acid, and at the same time, carbonic acid can decompose to water and carbon dioxide. In fact, this reaction will adjust to accommodate changes in the system. So if you add water and carbon dioxide, the reaction will shift to produce more carbonic acid, or if you add more carbonic acid, the reaction will shift to produce water and carbon dioxide. Still with me? Good. Because we need to introduce one more reaction, and that is that the carbonic acid, which is a product of that previous reaction, can react with calcium carbonate, the main ingredient in limestone rock. And when they react together, they produce calcium bicarbonate. And this is the critical part. Calcium bicarbonate is soluble, meaning that it will dissolve in the presence of water. Now consider a freshwater pond on a hillside in Bermuda. That water is reacting with carbon dioxide in the air to produce what? Carbonic acid. That carbonic acid is then reacting with the calcium carbonate in the limestone to produce calcium bicarbonate, which is dissolving as that water percolates down through the rock. Over the course of thousands of years, this downward flow of water slowly but surely erodes away more and more limestone. And consider that this isn't just happening in one place, but rather all over the island there are these subterranean water passageways, and eventually they coalesce to form the cave systems of Bermuda. And when this water eventually works its way all the way down to the ocean, it drains these systems and we're left with, well, caves. There's one more aspect to this chemistry that we need to review before we move on. Don't worry, no new equations, I promise. So let's revisit our reaction of carbonic acid and calcium carbonate coming together to form calcium bicarbonate. Again, this is a reversible reaction with the carbonic acid and calcium carbonate being in a dynamic equilibrium with the calcium bicarbonate. So a shift in the amount of one of these chemicals will result in the production or decrease in another on the other side of the equation. Remember also that the carbonic acid is still in a dynamic equilibrium with the water and carbon dioxide. So again, changes in the amount of water or carbon dioxide are going to mean changes in the amount of carbonic acid. And changes in the amount of carbonic acid are going to mean changes in the amount of calcium bicarbonate that is produced. And this is so critical because what it means is that water doesn't just unconditionally dissolve limestone. Under certain circumstances, it is going to act as a weak acid and convert calcium carbonate to calcium bicarbonate, thus dissolving limestone. However, changes, let's say, in carbon dioxide will decrease the amount of carbonic acid available, and then the calcium bicarbonate will decompose to form carbonic acid and calcium carbonate to balance out the equation. Overall, what this means is that as water is working its way down through the limestone, it is both dissolving calcium carbonate, or limestone, and depositing it. And it is in these circumstances of deposition that we see some of the beautiful cave features that we're going to describe right now. Let's start giving names to some of these features, or speleothems, which is the technical term for the features which we see inside of caves. The first formation we will discuss are called stalactites, and these are probably the best known cave formation. They are formed by the dripping of water from the ceiling of the cave. This water contains dissolved calcium bicarbonate, and as this water reacts with the atmosphere in the cave, some of that is converted back to calcium carbonate, which is deposited as the water falls. In this way, calcium carbonate slowly accumulates at each of the sites where the water is falling. These formations begin as these tiny little structures called soda straws. They're only about a few millimeters in diameter. However, over time, as more and more water flows down these straws and more calcium carbonate is deposited right on the tip, they grow and grow and grow until eventually they form the large structures that we refer to as stalactites. Then, if you look on the floor of the cave beneath these stalactites, you'll see that there is another deposit. These are stalagmites. Can you guess how they're formed? Just as the water left behind a tiny amount of calcium carbonate when it fell from the ceiling, it also leaves behind a tiny amount of calcium carbonate when it hits the floor, which results in a mound that comes up from the floor of the cave. So what happens if we let this process play out for thousands of years? Well, if the stalactite continues to work its way down and the stalagmite continues to work its way up, eventually the two will come together. When this happens, the structure is called a column, a continuous shaft of limestone that connects the ceiling of the cave to the floor. These are really beautiful structures, and sometimes quite large as well. They can be several meters in diameter. Another type of speleothem is flowstone, and this is where water is running down the walls of the cave, giving them a very smooth finish. And the final speleothem we will introduce today is called cave popcorn. Popcorn is formed when water seeps down into tiny cracks in the features of the cave, and it deposits calcium carbonate, or limestone, on the surface as it does so. In this way, you can think of cave popcorn as a conglomeration of thousands of little stalagmites. Though not a structural feature per se, I do want to point out a phenomenon which you will see in caves called collapse. The formation of caves is an inherently delicate process. I mean, we're talking about rocks that can literally dissolve in water. So, it shouldn't surprise us that oftentimes the features in caves will break under their own weight. Here we have sections of stalactites or columns, which, though they would have necessarily formed vertically, were, at the time I saw them, set at an angle. This indicates that these structures broke off from the cave at some time during their formation. In some instances, the entire ceiling of the cave can collapse, leaving behind a structure known as a cave pond. One of the things I love about exploring caves in Bermuda is that it really keeps the sense of adventure alive. Our island is so much smaller than other island nations, and I often hear people say things like, "We've already seen the whole island," or "There's nothing to do here." But even in just the filming of this one video, I actually stumbled upon 2 cave systems which I hadn't seen before, so I thought that was pretty cool. Another reason I think the caves are important is because they're just so beautiful. Oftentimes people think of caves as these dark places where no life exists, but these are actually some of the biodiversity hotspots of Bermuda, with several species of plankton, mostly crustaceans, which are found in these caves and nowhere else in the entire world. And though they may get a reputation for being dark, dreary places, once you shine a light in a cave, you're blown away by all the colors and shapes and varieties of the things that you see within the cave. My sincere hope is that one day we can treat caves with the same reverence and respect which we hold to other aspects of our environment, like the cedar tree and the cahao, because these really are some of the most beautiful and ecologically important places in all of Bermuda. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I look forward to making another one for all of you.